So, well, I want to thank Andre for having me in. How many people were here when I did a presentation a few months ago? Okay, a few. You're going to recognize some of the things that I talked about then, because I'm not limited to, I think it was 25 minutes in, because I have an hour now. I'm actually going to be able to get into some of the topics a little bit more. So I have some new stuff, but then I also have some of the older stuff. But don't think just because you recognize what I'm saying that it's not worth listening to, because we're actually going to delve a little bit deeper into some of the topics, so I covered that as well. The kilt. So let's get the kilt out of the way. It's not a skirt. It's not a dress. Kilt. It is, I'm not Scottish, although my surname is Scottish. But my family comes from Ireland. It's very possible that in one of the migrations that my family moved from Scotland to Ireland. That happened a lot. But if that happened, it's lost to the mists of antiquity, and I don't know about it. So these are the questions that I always get. Why do I wear the kilt? Number one, because I like it. Number two, because it makes it very easy to remember me. So when I meet somebody, and then I talk to them later, and they don't quite remember me, I say, I'm the guy in the kilt. And they say, oh yeah. So, so there's never any questions, never any problems. Funny. But I wouldn't wear it if I didn't like it. It's not just a marketing gimmick. I really do wear it a lot, not just professionally, and I wear it on a, I won't say daily because sometimes I don't leave my house, but when I'm out and about, I wear it on a very regular basis. It's pretty much either this or you know, the boxing, the athletic shorts that go down to your knees that have the drawstring. Yeah, that's it. So, I don't like inseams. How do I get away with wearing a kilt? Because in the world of direct response copywriting, everybody cares about results. They don't care about eccentricities. It's a wonderful business because I get to have tattoos and wear kilts and cuss a lot, and nobody says anything bad about it. Even if they're annoyed when they see the response rates and the money that they make, they stop being annoyed. Little girl, and she got us moving in the right direction. Attention, interest, desire, action. I asked about this earlier. We only had a couple of people who knew what it is. Does the pointer work? Can you guys see that red line?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So attention. When this is a sales formula. So whenever you're trying to make a sale with somebody, you have to first get their attention, then pique their interest, then get desire, and then get them to take action. If you miss any of those steps, right, you could have fantastic interest stuff, fantastic desire stuff, fantastic action stuff, and if you can't get anybody's interest, or pardon me, if you can't get anybody's attention, then all the rest of it's not worth anything. And you might have fantastic, I mean, how many times have, who has worked or is currently working in some sort of direct sales? Some sort of face-to-face, go in and sell to somebody. Okay. Now, so this may not apply so much for other people, maybe from the other side of the step. But how many times have you worked with somebody who you saw go in, talk to the prospect, gave him a fantastic sales presentation, absolutely had the prospect frothing at the mouth to do something, and then didn't give him the way to take action and walked out without the order? Right? And on the other hand, how many people have been on the other side of the thing, where you go in, maybe a car dealership or maybe to a furniture store or whatever, and you get somebody and they do a fantastic job all the way through. They answer all your questions, and you're just frothing at the mouth to get it, and you just want to get it, and you're sitting there looking at them, and they're looking at you, and you say, how do I get it? All right, well, we'll get back in touch with you. And they say, okay, and you walk out, and then you think, if he'd have just asked me, you know, if they had just said, sign here, right? It doesn't matter. If you don't have all four, then it doesn't matter. Then you're not going to get anywhere. You can't skip any of the steps. Now, that's what stories allow you to do. They allow you to get the attention. They allow you to pique interest. They allow you to create desire. They even allow you to spur action. Now, they're different stories through the sales process, but you can do those things as long as you take a minute and craft the stories the right way to begin with. Okay. Fire alarm is. Yeah.
Just real quick, I think that those 4 words there, they need to relate to the website also.
You know,
Oh, they relate to everything.
Yeah.
They relate to everything. We're gonna move into using stories in media. But yeah, this is the whole sales process, and I apologize that I didn't mention that specifically. But whether it's a website, whether it's face-to-face sales, whether it's a piece of direct mail, whatever the situation is, these 4 steps have got to be there. So when you're putting together your website, when somebody hops on, there are some studies. A lot of studies say 7 seconds. I've read a Canadian study that says 1/20th of a second to grab somebody's attention. We are becoming more and more and more and more attention deficit disorder society, where our attention is fragmented, and if something doesn't grab our interest like that, I mean, we're guilty of it too. I mean, how many people sit on a Sunday afternoon and flip the channels? Right?
Sorry, I missed what you just said.
Huh? You know, so if something doesn't catch your attention while you're flipping the channels, you just keep flipping, right? And you end up stopping on an infomercial, right? I mean, that's what you end up stopping on, because that's what they do. So no matter what the situation is, the written word, videos, audios, websites, direct mail pieces, phone book advertisements, everything, no matter what it is, attention, interest, desire, action. You've got to pull those people. You've got to pull people down the funnel. Stories are great for sales because they increase sales. Here's the truth. Let me see, where am I at? I told you I'm not a professional, so. Here's a great example. When you meet somebody, first you might meet them and say, hi, how you doing, or something. You know, and you kind of decide in the first couple of minutes whether you like that person or not. Now, once you get over that, whether you like that person or not, you start having a conversation with them. And inevitably, you start sharing stories with each other. Now, this happens in business meetings. It happens in personal interactions. You say hi to somebody, hi, how you doing? You spend a couple of minutes feeling them out. Okay, this is a good person. And then you start talking about something that you have in common. And then it's, oh, yeah, you know, oh, golf and this and that, or oh, politics, you know, hate Republicans, hate Democrats, hate Libertarians, hate this one, hate that one, whatever. Whatever you have in common, you start talking about it, and then you start sharing stories about that. Now, here's what you've got to understand. We're programmed to do that since we're children. Arguably, programmed to do that generation upon generation upon generation. It's not even something we're programmed as children to do. Arguably, we're programmed in our DNA to do it. So what happens is, if you start sharing stories with people, then that bypasses a lot of the conscious thought about the fact that we're standing here talking about doing a transaction, or you're getting a mail piece talking about doing a transaction, or you're getting an email talking about doing a transaction. When you can start talking about stories, you bypass a lot of the conscious mind shields that go up anytime somebody starts moving into a commercial situation, and you instantly start bonding with that person. Now, as you start bonding with that person, they start doing business with you, and your sales go up. So this is why stories are so powerful. Now, this same thing happens, by the way, not only with direct to sales. There's a lot to be said about communicating with your audience on a regular basis, either with emails, for no commercial purpose whatsoever, with no idea about selling them anything, no idea about doing, just communicating with them so they open up your emails and sharing stories with them, or communicating with them in a newsletter. A newsletter is one of the most powerful pieces of marketing that you can do, as a monthly newsletter. So, great, monthly newsletter is fantastic, but you don't sell anything in it. Well, why is it such a powerful piece of marketing material? Because you're telling stories in it, and you're creating a bond. Nobody wants to hear about the latest thing, the latest whiz-bang gadget on a website. Nobody wants to hear about the latest development with nonprofits or diabetes. Nobody wants to hear about the latest new building technique that came out for aluminum buildings. What they want to hear about is what you did this weekend with your kids. Now, that seems bizarre, but that's the truth. So that's why newsletters done properly are so incredibly powerful, is because they start to build bonds with people. You start to communicate with people. You bypass the idea that this is just somebody who's a commercial contact who I deal with on a commercial level, and you start to become a friend. And when you start to cross that threshold, that's when you start to get repeat customers. That's when you start to get people doing business with you. That's why social media is so powerful. Now, I have a lot of beefs with the way that social media is used, because I think that there's a lot of no aspersions to anybody who's doing social media marketing in the room, either doing it or teaching it or consulting with it or taking on clients to help. But I think there's a lot of, quite frankly, crap that's taught out there and that's done out there, and have had some done with me, by the way, about how to use social media and what the best thing with social media and all this kind of stuff. But done properly, it builds incredible bonds with people. And I'm subject to it, maybe more subject to it because I'm in the business. But there's pages on Facebook or people I have on LinkedIn that anytime they post something or anytime they do something, I'm looking to see what they're doing. I want to see what's going on. And what I find is that these are people who are just posting about their day. You know, I'm always curious about what's going on. Even if I don't comment or even if I don't like, I'm always just curious about what's going on. By the way, in the back, you mentioned that you work in the healthcare business and you're trying to figure out whether social media is good. It has been my experience, and admittedly, this is not this is anecdotal. It's not you know, it's not fact driven. It's not, so I don't have any facts to show you or any studies to show you. But it has been my experience that people would rather have a witch doctor who cares about them than the most talented surgeon in the world who doesn't give a shit about them. Yeah, so true. If you can create a situation in social media where you have a bond and people believe that the people administering your health care care about their patients, then you have just jumped a huge chasm. So I think it is appropriate, but if done properly. Obviously, there's HIPAA and all kinds of other concerns too, but if done properly, I think.
Yeah, but social media is also the way you get up in the search engines.
I'm sorry?
Social media is also the way you get your.
Yeah, but SEO traffic, by and large, the latest statistics are showing that SEO traffic is all but useless for most businesses. The search engine optimization traffic is, by and large, doesn't mean for every single business, but by and large, the statistics are showing that it's absolutely useless. Mm-hmm. That paid traffic and other forms of generated traffic can be very valuable, but having people just stumble across your website on a Google search or something just is not leading to leading to commercial endeavors. And despite everything I've talked about, social media and newsletters and this sort of thing, at the end of the day, we're here to get money from them, right? I mean, that's it here. Remember Mother Teresa? No money, no help. Well, no money, no mortgage payment. Right. So that's really what we're here for. I said we're programmed from children to be listen to stories and to learn from stories and to learn what to do and what not to do from stories. So how many people would know what I mean if I said, you know, if I said somebody just had a case of sour grapes? Yeah, virtually everybody know what I was talking about. Well, there's your story. There he is, right there. You know, and everybody agrees that that person is not a really nice person. At least not in that particular circumstances, in that particular moment. They got a case of sour grapes because it's probably no good anyway. So we are taught since children, programmed since children, arguably programmed, as I said, in our DNA, but programmed since children to listen to stories to learn how we're supposed to behave. Well, if you know that, and you know that there's a way that you want your prospects to behave, right? Are we starting to see, you know, how we can take advantage of some of this stuff? We're programmed since children to learn how to behave with stories. Now, I'm not going to get into religious discussion here, and I don't want to. However, as a purely sales and marketing endeavor, you get a red letter version of the Bible, you will find that every time Jesus answers a question, he answers it with a question or with a parable. Now, they started with, and I apologize, I've forgotten how many, but they started with a few people, right? He started with like 12 of them or something, right? And we'll give plus or minus, right? And And now, right, he's got hundreds of millions around the world.
Billions.
Huh?
Billions.
Billions, okay.
1.8 billion.
1.8 billion around the world. Well, you know, now it took him 2,000 years to do it. Right? But we don't need 1.8 billion, do we? You know, we need a couple thousand. So, the power of stories, right there. And the power of his story, right? So not only the stories that he tells within it, but then the whole story of itself. The story itself is powerful. And that's where when you're a good storyteller, your prospect will see you as a truth teller. Why? Because people see stories as truth. They've been taught since they were children to see stories, to see information relayed in stories as the truth. So, I stand up and say, we have the best whiz-bang gadget in the world. And everybody says, you know, right? Bullshit. But I tell a story about Jim, who needed a whiz-bang gadget, and had gotten 4 other whiz-bang gadgets and been severely disappointed with every whiz-bang gadget, and then got our whiz-bang gadget, and was absolutely thrilled about how well the whiz-bang gadget worked. Now, especially if I can tell that story in a context where I'm not in the middle of a sales presentation, like in a newsletter or something like this, that is incredibly powerful. But even in the context of a sales presentation, it's incredibly powerful. For example, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit because I keep getting stories that, you know, I mean, I keep remembering my days of selling sunrooms. Oh, it's fun stuff. I love direct sale. I love going into people's houses and working with them and doing direct sales. It's a ton of fun. Well, when you're on a streak, it's fun. When you're not on a streak, it kind of sucks. I'm sitting in a guy's house one time, and we're talking about building a sunroom for him. And I said, okay, I'm doing my sales presentation. He said, yeah. So then we kind of get over that, and we're down in the short rows a little bit. You know, we're down in the area where we're starting to talk about closing and looking for, and he mentions, you know, my neighbor had a room built by thus and so. I don't remember who it is. And I said, did he? And he said, yeah. I said, let's take a look at it. So he opened the front door, and we looked out across, and I could see the roof of the sunroom. It came up above the privacy fence, and I could see that the roof was a little bit, you know, like this. And I said, yeah, the thing's waving at you. And he said, what? And I said, well, you see? And he said, yeah, I do. And I said, who'd you say had to do it again? And he said, thus and so. And I don't remember who it was, and I wouldn't say, just in case they're still in business, I wouldn't say even if it was the person. And I said, oh, yeah, well, that's why. And he said, what? And I said, well, see, they're great if you get their house crew. But I had a guy just the other day who went, you know, about 6 weeks ago, who went with them instead of going with us. And the problem was, turns out that this guy, whatever, you know, gave him his name, whatever, turns out to be true, that it was probably, you know, puffery. But what I was saying was true. But the thing about the guy working was probably puffery. So I said that the problem is that the guy went with the other company because they were a little less expensive than us, to be perfectly honest with you. But the problem was that he got their overflow crew. See, they're busy. They were busy right now. I don't know if they're busy right now. If you get their house crew, they do a great job, but he got their overflow crew. And he's having all kinds of problems. It's leaking here, and the roof's leaking, and it's leaking under the wall, and the concrete's not poured level, and this and that, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, overflow crew. Well, yeah, you know, they're a small company, so they can't afford to keep 2 crews on staff full time. So what they do is they have their house crew that they keep on staff full time, and then they have an overflow crew that they call and put together, and it's just like whoever's available in the business to come do the work. And well, I don't like that at all. No, it's horrible. All our guys are in-house guys. Boom, got the sale. But it's because, see, if I'd have just said, oh well, you're rolling the dice, and I hadn't told the story about the guy 6 weeks ago, he'd have just looked at that like, well, he's just saying that. But because I couched it in a story, even though it was puffery, he looked at me as a truth teller. And why did he do that? Because we've been taught, let's say it together, because we've been taught as children to see stories as true. People do business with people they like. That's right, right? So they also have, people also have shared experiences. So these two young ladies have a shared experience of doing charity work for this young lady and for this charity. They'll talk about that their entire life. They'll talk about that their entire life. Every time they talk to each other for the next 25 years, they'll bring something up about this little girl. That's what friends do. And that's why origin stories are so important to share with your customers. Because when you start sharing origin stories with your customers over and over again, what happens is synthetic experience and real experience become confused in the mind.
What's an origin story?
We'll get into it in just a second. But it's a story where you came from, how you got to where you are in your professional life. Now, by sharing stories, your origin story, and then other stories that have happened to you in the past, over and over and over again with the same crowd, synthetic experience becomes conflated with actual experience, and you guys have a shared experience. You see, you become friends with your prospects, and people do business with people they like and trust. Their opinion with story, that's why politicians never make a point. They always make a point and then say, that's just like so-and-so who I met here who was having this situation. And it's the story can sway, can actually change somebody's opinion, as unbelievable as that may seem. How to create and use a story. So first, you want to decide what you want the story for. Is it a story to create a bond? Is it to get them to take an action? Is it, what do you want the story to do? Now you got to start with the end in mind, right? You got to figure out what you want the story to do, and then you move forward. Now you make an outline of the events in the story to make sure that it accomplishes number one. Now you don't have a story now. These are factual events in the story. Puffed factual events in the story. But the point is that you are you're creating a fact-based kind of thing. So think of a resume as opposed to an origin story, okay? So that's what this is. Number two is like your resume. Then you decide on what emotions you want to elicit from the story. In other words, to get to number one, here's the facts, but there are certain emotions that you can elicit from the story that will help you get to number one. So do you want them to be scared? Do you want them to be excited? Do you want them to be overwhelmed with warm feelings? Do you want them to be pissed off? What emotions do you want to generate in the customer or in the prospect to get them to number one? And finally, you start filling in the details. Now, you will hear people refer to the details of a story as the unimportant details. I refer to them as the all-important details, because here's the truth. The difference between a sunny day and a cloudy day in the same story changes the emotions that story elicits. The difference between sitting in an office on the 14th floor or the 15th floor or the 72nd floor, all different, by the way. The difference between sitting in a cubicle and sitting in a corner office, looking out over the skyscrapers, the New York skyline, or the difference in sitting in an office that you own, looking out your window out to a cow field, where where your business is located in a in a rural area. Now those are all very unimportant to the outline of the story events. Somebody walked in, this and this happened, But a sunny day in New York City in a corner office versus a cloudy day in a rural setting next to a cow field versus a overcast day from a cubicle that you can see if you look across the office and there's a window like all the way across the office and you can see that it's a cloudy day. These all create different moods, they elicit different emotions, and those emotions can help or hinder you in getting the prospects to do what you want them to do. So if you don't follow this pattern, what you end up with is you end up with a great story that does exactly what you don't want to have it do. By the way, anybody familiar with the sales process understands that people buy emotionally based on logic, so that they can make in other words, you move them emotionally to get to a lot, and then help them logically to make the buying decision. So you're starting with the buying decision in mind, and then just going through and working backwards. So that's the way you build a story. Then you do not change the story for purpose to purpose. So you have this fantastic story that gets people to buy. I mean, you write this story down, you tell it on a video, you tell it to them in person, you put it on the internet, and people are buying. Well, now I want to take the same story. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a squeeze page up, so I'm going to use it as an opt-in. I'm going to use the same story. Confuses you, confuses the people. Everybody doesn't know what to do. Don't do it. Different story. Different purpose, different story. It's fine to have, as a matter of fact, there was a guy who sold fire alarms, made his living selling high-end fire alarms. And his big thing was you have to tell 2 or 3 stories between each test close. Now, for those of you who haven't worked in the direct marketing field, what that means is before you ask the customer to do something, you have to tell them 2 to 3 different stories. So if you use that same thing and moved it online, you would have like a squeeze page that was, so you don't necessarily want to do 2 to 3 stories, but it's fine to have more stories. You don't have to limit yourself. You can have as many as you'd like. Put them up as many as you'd like. Once you have the story fleshed out, you have an idea of what you want, then you want to get people in your market. This is important. If you're selling to people who are 55 years old plus, you don't want to have somebody 30 telling you whether the story works or not, because it doesn't for them. It shouldn't. If it does, change it, because it's not going to work for this market. Have somebody in your market read the story and then gauge their reaction. Do they like it? Does it grab their attention? More importantly, does it move them closer to the desired goal? Test your story in your marketing process. Great way to test is with email. Or, wonderful thing about the internet is you can split test. So you can put, you got a website up, you know your stats on the website, well, change the copy and put another website up and see what, and have it go 50-50, right? Have them send to each one and see what happens. Do you get a bump in sales, or a bump in opt-ins, or a bump in whatever action you're trying to get the people to take? If you do, great. If you don't, go back to the drawing board, start over again. Once you get the results you want, you have a story you can use. Now you can use that same story as long as you're getting them to do the same action. You can use that same story in direct mail. You can use that same story on the internet. You can use the same story in emails over and over and over again, by the way. Don't think just because you send an email with one story that said one thing, you can't send another email that says the exact same thing. Number one, people have short memories. And number two, most of them don't open your emails anyway. Sorry to tell you. So it's not that big a deal. You can use it in direct mail, you can use it in flyers, you can use it in space ads, you can use it anywhere. Once you have a good story, it can be used over and over and over again. Obviously, this takes time. This is strategic, not tactical, but it will work, and it is powerful if you do it and do it right and go through the process. The flip part of the story, and yeah, we're getting close. So here's the flip: lose weight while you sleep. Right? Everybody's probably heard an advertisement somewhere, even if I can see some of you don't pay attention to weight loss ads, like I do. You have no need to. But lose weight while you sleep. Probably you've all heard that. So, but here's the flip. So you buy it, lose weight while I sleep, wonderful. So you order it, and you get it there, and they say, yes, lose weight while you sleep, as long as you eat precisely 697 calories, go for a 15-mile run just before you go to bed. Don't eat any midnight snacks. Sleep exactly 6.72 hours a night, and drink a health food drink that tastes like liquefied, and you can put whatever you like in here. Okay? So, that's the flip. Now, that's when you're telling a story, you get to the end of the story, and it has to have a purpose. You have to flip. The flip is the close. So the flip is, here's the story, here's the point I want to make the story make. Don't ever, 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 ever rely on the prospect to draw the conclusion you want them to draw from the story. Add the flip to the end. Tell them what you want them to do. Just like Jim did. He gave me his information. The information, and what I sent to Jim, an email over the next 10 weeks, was good enough to double his sales, was good enough to settle all his problems with his wife, was good enough to whatever. Make sure you have the flip on there.